I entitled my study for today, Soldiers for Christ. Bible compares us as a Christians being involved in a war. And why it was so interesting that Paul brings the shield and the helmet and all these attributes or parts of the dressing for the soldier and makes a parallel into the spiritual. Because in the times of Apostle Paul, the Roman Empire was in power. And everywhere, in every province, there were troops of legionnaires, of Roman soldiers. Therefore, for people, it was a very familiar thing. And the illustration Paul made out of that was very easy to understand for everyone. Because everybody saw the Roman soldiers, and then they knew what they have. The shield, the sword, and the helmet. But further, the Bibles and Paul brings in 2 Corinthians 10, verse 3 and 4. For though we do war after the flesh, warfare are not carnal. So Paul explains that the battles we are involved in, they are not with the flesh. And what we are using, the sword, is not a carnal sword. It's not made of metal or brass. And what we are fighting against, he wrote in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. So basically, he says that our enemy is devil, his angels, the evil spirits. Those are our enemies we are fighting with. In Review and Herald, August 8, 1899, there is a statement, in every place God has his witnesses who testify to the power of his rich grace. In all their ways they acknowledge God, and he directs their path. They testify to the transforming power of the grace of God, for they stand under the blood-stained banner of Prince Emmanuel. If Roman soldiers were recognized by the way they were dressed, by the color of their shield, and by the type of their helmet, they were recognized everywhere. Oh, that's a Roman soldier. How the Christian soldiers are recognized, or should be recognized? They testify about the power of God's grace, a change, a transformation in their life. I'll stop here. I want to bring you a question. Look at this picture. What emotions do you read on the face of this man? Happy. Do you know who is this man? This is a historical person. He's actually... No. Let me show you the full picture. Let me share you the full story about this. This is a Chedomir Ljubachupic, was a Yugoslav law student, commissioner of resistance movement against fascism of German Nazi and Italian collaborators in Montenegro. He's actually from Yugoslavia. The photo of him taken moments before he was shot by Chetnik collaborators in May 9, 1942. They caught him, and the lady was with him. They tortured them for 3 days. He didn't speak up. He didn't betray anyone. So on May 9, 1942, he was shot by the Italian soldiers, which were collaborators with the German Nazis and also were pushing for the fascism. That's his picture before death. Would you ever think, seeing this picture, this person is going to die in next couple minutes? What a joy you see on his face. Another also happened, this Yugoslavian soldier. Why those soldiers could die with such enthusiasm? If you see in the picture, he has a loop on his neck. He is going to be hanged in a couple minutes. Why he has his hands up? Why is he so enthusiastic? Why the fear of death didn't have power over them? I don't know if they were Christians. Maybe they were some Orthodox, because that was the popular church in those days in Yugoslavia. Were they Orthodox? Did they believe in God? I don't know that. And the history doesn't have these facts. But what we know, they were fighting against fascism. They believed the idea and the noble purpose of their fight, because they saw what the Nazis did to the Jews and to many other nations, how they were exterminating them in the concentrative camps. They knew about that, and they were fighting against this regime. And the idea, the nobleness of the purpose gave them courage to die with joy, because they knew, I'm going to die today, but my follower, another soldier, my friend, they will win, and the victory will be ours. Why Christians, being involved in such a noblest war ever fought, don't have such a joy? Before we answer this question, I'll return to the spiritual illustrations. How would you describe a good soldier, or good soldier versus bad soldier? Well, a good soldier is an obedient soldier, no? He's obedient to those who is above him, fulfilling the orders. He is initiative soldier. And he's a fearless. When he goes in a battle, he's not hiding behind the bushes or pretending that he, broke his leg, or in a war, many soldiers, when they invented these guns, they were shooting into their legs or into their arm, pretending that they were wounded by the enemy. And or I know there are soldiers who they were afraid to die, and as they were sitting in those digging in the ground, those trenches, and they were sitting there, so they knew that tomorrow is going to be another attack and they may die. So they were pulling their hand out of the trenches and waiting for a sniper to make a hole, and then so happy that it's just a hole in my hand, they're going to the hospital because now I'm wounded, so I cannot go in. And thus they were preserving their life. That's not a good soldier. Loyal soldier. So even if you're caught and tortured, you keep your mouth shut. You keep loyalty. And having sound judgment. And I'd like to discuss a little bit about these attributes of a good soldier. Well, the bad soldier is basically the opposite of this. Obedient soldier. In Matthew chapter 8 and verse 9, there's a story about a soldier who was asking Christ, just say a word and my servant will be healed. And he, applying to Christ why he was believing that a word would be enough. And hear what he says. For I am a man under authority, having soldiers under me. And I say to this man, go, and he goeth, and to another, come, and he cometh. So he was thinking like a soldier. Christ, you don't have to go. There is that's not how the army functions. General doesn't go to check if his horse has, is ready for battle. I don't know. There are certain people assigned for certain jobs. And the general job is not to check those things which has to be checked by other people assigned for that. So he was thinking like a soldier. Therefore, he says to Christ, you don't have to go. Just say a word, give a command, and my servant will be done, will be healed. That's what a good soldier, obedient, order. I would like to read you statements from Testimonies, Volume 5, pages 698 and 99. It is impossible for the finite mind of man to fully comprehend the character of the works of the Infinite One. We can so far comprehend his dealing with us and the motives by which he is actuated, that we may discern boundless love and mercy united to infinite power. We can understand as much as his purposes as it is for our good to know. And beyond this, we must still trust the might of the omnipotent. Sometimes I heard people, they refuse to obey a command. They refuse to obey a certain rule because they don't understand what is behind. Unless I understand why I have to be vegetarian, I'm not going to be a vegetarian. Unless I understand why I have to pay tithe, I'm not going to pay it. So we always demand a complete, absolute explanation for everything. Unless I understand why that happened to me, or why that happened to my family, or why I lost that, I'm not going to trust this God. Because, bad things happen to me. If he's a good God, if I'm a good, loyal Christian, I should be blessed, I should be rich, I should be healthy. And if it's the opposite in my life, then God is not taking care of me, I don't want to deal with this God. Do soldiers always understand the order of their higher officers? No, because they don't see the whole picture. In a battle, those who see the whole pictures, they deal with these troops, like with the checkers. They just move where they need. Do they understand the soldiers why he's fighting particularly in this corner, in this field? Oh no, because he doesn't see the whole picture. Do we always understand why Heavenly Father allows certain things to happen to us? Well, something we may understand, and he allows us to understand what is for our good. But he expects obedience. And if you don't understand why, just simply trust and obey. Period. Initiative. Well, sometimes initiative soldiers, we think of a soldier who takes a grenade and throw himself under the tank. Or we think of a David, the whole army stands there and nobody says, I'm going to fight this Goliath. And a David takes the initiative and says, I'm going to fight this Goliath. This is initiative soldier. That's how a good soldier is. He's not afraid. He takes initiative and says, I'm going to do it. So he's always looking how he can improve, what he can do to bring the victory. You remember that David's best friend, the Saul's son, Jonathan. Him and his servant, you remember? Well, let us put a sign. If they say to those Philistines, come up here, then let's go up because the victory is ours. That's a good soldier, initiating, let's do something. Let's promote the victory. But how about us in practical Christian life? Initiative soldier, initiative Christian. One time in one mall, I've seen this on YouTube, they did an experiment. There was a team of about maybe 20, 30 people, and they were just sitting, pretending like they're just bystanders, or sitting, relaxing, or eating in a mall. And they put an empty bottle on the floor, right in the middle where people walk, seeing who will pick up that bottle and put it in a trash. And the camera is showing from different directions. As people see, they just walk by. Some people even push it with the foot, away from their path, as they go, just moving away. And then another person was coming the other direction, moving backwards to the same place where the bottle was. And finally, was a family and a father with a child. So father picks up the bottle and put it in the trash. And all these 30 people was waiting for this moment. And they stand up and they applaud him. Well, I believe he received a very joyous moment, for what he did. Why other people were just walking by? You know why I brought this experience? Because I remember a couple of weeks ago, I was going from this building to the bookstore, and there was a white napkin, probably left one of my children, because that was Monday, so it probably was left there from Saturday. And I just passed it by, and then as I passed it by, a thought came to my mind. This is the property of the church. I wouldn't leave it at my home. So I came back, I picked up that napkin, and went to that bookstore and put it in the trash. And, well, I'm not just saying that I'm that good always. But that was experience, and this is one, I just said that initiation, a good soldier, not necessarily fighting a great battle. You can be a good soldier at home, putting things back, sweeping the floor, washing the dishes, and you show how good soldiers you are. Fearless. I would like to bring you a statement about the Jerome. It's quoted in Great Controversy, page 114. Year-long sentence of condemnation was passed upon him. Jerome, it's a friend of John Huss. He was led out to the same spot upon which Huss had yielded up his life. He went singing on his way, his countenance lighted up with joy and peace. His gaze was fixed upon Christ, and to him death has lost its terror. When the executioner, about to kindle the pile, stepped behind him, the martyr exclaimed, "Come forward boldly. Apply the fire before my face. Had I been afraid, I should not be here." That's a soldier of Christ. Why his countenance was lighted with a joy and peace?
From God.
His gaze was fixed upon Christ. How? By faith. And the death lost its terror for him. Just remember the picture I showed you previously. You don't see any sign of fear on that face, that smiling face of that Yugoslavian soldier. In our practical Christian life, we always think, as a Christians, when the persecution will come, when Sunday law will be forced, I will show that I'm a Christian, I will stay faithful. Do we have fear today? Let me ask you a question. Do I have courage to fulfill the Lord's command from Matthew 18:15? You know what is written there? If thy brother have sinned against thee, go and talk to him or to her. What do we do instead? We talk to my wife first, then to my friends, then to pastor, then to friends of that person, but that person. Why? Well, we may find thousands of excuses. First of all, I'm not that talkative, I'm not a good speaker, I don't know how to approach this case. Let pastor deal with that. Or you go and talk to him. I'll share this with Brother Daniel, so let him talk to that person. What is that? It's a sign of fear. Not having courage. What kind of a soldier is this? Am I brave enough to tell people what I think straight into their face? But like Brother Bobby mentioned in the Sabbath school, not talking everything what I say, what I think, being rude to people. No, but in purpose to save the soul. But not showing hypocrisy, but saying what I really think. loyal soldier. And we always apply this loyalty to the master. But where our loyalty begins? You remember what the first epistle of John says, if thou sayest, I love God, but don't love your brother, who you are? A liar. Can you be a loyal soldier and a liar at the same time? You see, loyalty can be showed to a spouse, to my wife, to your husband. Loyalty to the church duties. You know, sometimes I remember back in Ukraine, there was a family. And they were always on every business meeting, they were standing up and says, brothers, there is no love in the church, there is no love in the church, there is no love in the church. And I remember one sister, it was every business meeting, they were standing up and complaining that there is no love in the church. In one of the business meeting, one sister stood up and says, dear sister, because she was most, talkative, yeah. And dear sister, says, you say there is no love in the church. Says, I personally love everyone in the church. Now show me, whom do you love in this church? There was silence. So, whom do you love in the church? And she sat down, just left her with this question. And neither that person, neither that sister, didn't speak a word. Soon they left the church. You see, what kind of a loyalty is that? You accuse the whole church except me. So, you see, if we can compare to a soldier, like French soldiers, when they invaded Russia, did they want to go? No. So they were complaining, why we go there? What's the benefit? What's the purpose? Loyalty to the master. Master from a capital letter, meaning Jesus Christ. How do we show loyalty to the master? God is always testing us. In example of Job, chapter 2, verse 4 and 5, and Satan answered to Lord and said, skin for skin, yea, all that a man has will give for his life. But put forth thine hand now, and touch his bone and his flesh, and he will curse thee to thy face. Poor Job. His loyalty was really tested, hardly tested. First, by the loss of the whatever he had. Then by the loss of the most dear, the children. Then his own wife was testing his loyalty. Curse God and deal done and die, don't suffer. How could you remain loyal to such a crude God? And then by his friends, his loyalty was tested. Best friends. So everybody was against him and everything was against him. Yet he kept his loyalty to the master. That's a good soldier. Could Job see the whole picture? No. Did he have doubts? Oh, yes. But though, as we read in the beginning statement, though he couldn't see the great picture, that God's name and God's power to save a person or to make someone to obey God, not out of fear but out of love, was at stake. That God's reputation was at stake. If he could see the whole picture, easily he would go through all the suffering. But he didn't see the whole picture. He saw only the suffering, only the loss, and only pressure from wives and his friends. Yet he remained loyal. And then, when his loyalty was proven, God revealed to him the whole picture. That his loyalty proved to the Satan and to the whole universe that God is love. And his grace is more powerful than Satan's temptation. How about if we are tested similar? And without seeing the whole picture, we see only the loss. Now, this is my dear mother or my dear son. Oh, this is the loss. This is my business. I lost everything. This was my car. I just got it and it crashed in the accident. And it's my fault. So the insurance will not cover it. So you see, sometimes we don't see the whole picture when God is testing our loyalty. How much we're going to trust Him in any situation. In His providence, God places before human beings service that will be as medicine for their diseased minds. And further, it's listed, what scenarios. Some He places places where relaxed discipline and overindulgence will not become their snare, where they are taught to appreciate the value of time and to make the best and wisest use of it. So you see, some people, they have to be working in such a job or under such a boss that they constantly suffer. Why? Because they constantly had to learn some severe discipline. Because unless they would have some other job where, they don't have a discipline, it would work towards their ruin. There are some who desire to be a ruling power and who need the sanctification of submission. Sometimes, when our hearts are dreaming of something, position or some ambitions for the riches of this world, for a nicer house, and we struggle and struggle and struggle and struggle, and it doesn't work. Why? We need to learn certain lessons. Some God trains by bringing to them disappointment and apparent failure. It is His purpose that they shall learn to master difficulty. Some soldiers are lazy by their nature, and they'll have to learn some lessons. And therefore their training is harder than training of the other soldiers. Having sound judgment. For God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. You know that the Romans' persecution by the pagan Roman Empire against Christians, it was going up and down. So they had moments of freedom and then again severe persecution. And then again couple years of freedom and then again couple years of severe persecution. And it's a historical fact. One of the severest persecution or periods of the severest persecution was caused by a Christian. Zealous Christian who went during the night and turned from the postament the statue of Zeus. He tried to fight the idolatry. And thus he was thinking that I will put this statue down because this is an idol, and I will show to the whole Roman Empire that I'm not afraid to die. And due to his zealous act, thousands of Christians died. It is not enough to be conscientious in your belief and practice. A man may be conscientious in bending his footsteps in a path that does not lead to heaven. That he is sincere does not prove that he is right. The sincere motives of his heart will not serve to change error into truth. We must test our conscience by the word of God, if we would be approved workers before Him. It's not enough to be sincere in certain things. It has to be grounded on the Word of God. It is written. Another statement. There is a noisy zeal without aim or purpose, which is not according to knowledge, which is blind in its operations and destructive in its results. This is not Christian zeal. Christian zeal is controlled by principle and is not spasmodic. It is earnest, deep, and strong, engaging the whole soul and arising to exercise the moral sensibilities. The salvation of souls and the interest of the kingdom of God are matters of the highest interest. Importance. What object is there that calls for greater earnestness than the salvation of souls and the glory of God? Continuation. Christian zeal will not exhaust itself in talk, but will feel and act with vigor and efficiency. Yet Christian zeal will not act for the sake of being seen. Humility will characterize every effort and be seen in every work. Christian zeal will lead to earnest prayer and humiliation, and to faithfulness in home duties. In the family circle will be seen the gentleness and love, benevolence and compassion, which are ever the fruits of Christian zeal. I've seen sometimes a medical missionary work, and the lectures are given, so people are invited, people from the world who has no clue about health diet. They're invited to the health lectures. And in 1 or 3 days, they are taught everything. No meat, no milk, no eggs, gluten, no, it's also not good for you. How about some oil in the salad? Oil is bad for you also. No cooking class presentation, no recipes, nothing. And then we feel satisfaction. Oh, we had 30 visitors. And what? You left people with a phrase, stay healthy and enjoy your life. Did you teach them how to live healthy? Or you just told them that this and 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 this, don't eat all this. What should I eat then? You see, it's not enough to put a check mark, oh, we did something, oh, there were present many people. How we did that? Was that zeal to do the medical missionary work based on some plan, project? As it's written, the salvation of souls is the matter of the highest importance. What is the purpose of publication? What is the purpose of the article? What is the purpose of this pamphlet? What is the purpose of this campaign? To save the soul or make a great deal about it? Now let's draw the conclusion. I left you with a question unanswered in the beginning in regard to good soldiers. And now I want to ask you some questions in the end again, and we'll try to answer. Why those soldiers could die with such enthusiasm? Why their fear of death didn't have power over them? Let me ask you differently. Why there are so many Adventists sad? When we talk about history of Adventists and the history of Reform movement, why there are so many disappointments? Why Christians get depressed? Why the army is demoralized? Is it because the Lord is delaying his coming? I want to bring you a historical example as an illustration. Nazis, when they invaded the Soviet Union, they had so much courage that because they were brainwashed, that they will overthrow the Bolshevik regime, the communist regime, and they will give freedom to people, and they will free them from the oppression of the great tyrant Stalin. And especially even in Ukraine, many Nazis, when they first invaded, they were welcomed by many people. And Russian army, their spirit was almost at zero. They were absolutely demoralized. Thousands and hundreds of thousands, they were surrendering to the Nazis because they didn't want to fight for Stalin. I mean, he was really a dictator. Everybody had somebody of their relatives sent to Siberia for nothing, just because somebody said that he said something against the government. Caught, sent to Siberia. Thousands and 10,000s of people. And from every village, somebody had a friend, a family, a relative who was sent to Siberia. They didn't like the government. They had no courage absolutely whatsoever to fight for Stalin. And this is why the Nazis, in a couple months, they were 30 kilometers before Moscow. So they were almost getting the absolute victory over the Soviet Union. One thing ignited the power to fight in the Russian army. What Nazis did to the people in the territory which they invaded already. They were burning people alive, the whole villages. They were killing the thousands and 10,000s of Jews, especially in Kiev, the capital of Ukraine. It was very richly populated with the Jews. I don't know how many tens of thousands of Jews. They brought the excavators, they dig big holes, and they were just killing them thousands a day and dropping them in those graves. When people saw what is fascism, when people saw what kind of freedom the Nazis are bringing, their spirit ignited in them. And they found the power to fight. But when Nazis were pushed back to Berlin, they were absolutely demoralized and they didn't want to fight. Why? They lost the purpose. What was the purpose of our war? Because everybody realized who was Hitler in reality, the soldiers. So the brainwash was gone. The brainwash had no power over them anymore. You know what Americans did? When American army invaded part of the Western Germany, they discovered a concentrative camp. So what they did, they went in all the cities and villages around, and thousands of Germans, by force, they were put in the trucks and brought to the concentrative camp. They gave them a tour through the concentrative camp, and then brought them back to their villages and cities. For Germans to see what is their regime, who is Hitler. And they lost all the desire to fight for Hitler because there was no purpose anymore. So why a church, if to compare to the army, may be demoralized? Why no power, no that zeal, no that ignition, that courage, that spirit to fight for the Lord? But gradually a change came. Speaking of the early Christian church. The believers begin to look for defects in others. They lost sight of the Savior and his love. John, the Apostle John, realizing that brotherly love was waning in the church, urged upon believers the constant need of this love. It is not the opposition of the world that most endangers the Church of Christ. It's not the persecutions of Roman Empire which killed the zeal of the first early church. It is the evil cherished in the hearts of believers that works their most grievous disaster and most surely retards the progress of God's cause. Whose fault that I am not an active, brave soldier? Oh, that's a fault of the church. Oh, that's a fault of false brothers. Oh, that's a fault of unconverted ministers. No. Whose fault is that? They lost sight of their Savior. You remember when Jerome was dying on the place of a hearse to be ready to be burned at stake? He said, his countenance was lighting up with joy and peace. Why? Because he gazed upon Savior, the Lord Jesus. And the death lost its terror for him. Why? Why those people could die? I don't know if they were Christians, those Yugoslavian soldiers, but that's just an example I found. But there are thousands of them from Russian side, from Romania, from many other countries, which were, dying heroically. Why? And when they were not afraid of death, because of the purpose. They had the purpose. Why we are demoralized? We lost the purpose. It's a love of the world. It's a things we see in others. The believers begin to look for defects in others instead of looking for defects in me. And when we look for defects in others, love is just gone. Brotherly love cannot exist with finding defects in others. Therefore, we need to refocus our sight on Jesus. That's the only surety that we may progress as Christian soldiers. Amen.